Hello, everyone. I'm Emily Rose Heyer. Welcome back to the Four Agreements book study. We are on week 5, which means we're reviewing our week 4 assignment, which was to read the fourth agreement, always do your best. Now, I find the other 3 agreements pretty challenging to get right all the time. So this fourth agreement is a bit of relief, because if you could really have grace and compassion with yourself and how you are and know that you are doing your best, then the judge in your mind doesn't have anything to blame or shame, right? If you really try your best, then you don't have regret. Um, and I love how he really brings it back to it's all about coming back to presence in this very moment, in your body, in who you are right now as a mother, a parent, a wife, a partner, whoever you are in this moment. Do your best. And then tomorrow you don't have regrets about it. You can let yourself off the hook, essentially. Um, Letting yourself off the hook of this perfectionism, this ideal way of being, uh, that really creates more suffering in your life. I have dealt with this perfectionism for so many years, and becoming a parent really has helped me be okay with sometimes days are B plus, B minus. Sometimes it's a big F. And if I am honest with myself, sometimes my best is just not good. It's not that great. Um, but that's all I could give in that moment because of who I was in that moment, because of the understanding I had, because of my physical capabilities in that moment. If I was sleep deprived, if I was malnourished, if I wasn't hydrated, I'm not going to be at my best. I'm not going to be um, in my right mind, so to speak. If I'm sick, if I'm dealing with a loss, if I'm grieving, I'm not going to be the best parent I can be in that moment. But at the time, that is my best. And that really has helped me not so much lower my standards in the negative way, but to really lower it from this ideal perfectionism that no one can ever reach. Like, no one is going to be in a good mood, calm and peaceful and present with their children constantly. It's just not right. It's not going to happen. And honestly, I think it sets your children up for failure when you pretend that's how you should be, because then you're not giving them the whole range of human emotion to witness in their parents and humanity. So in the agreement, I mean, the workbook, the first question is, how would practicing this agreement change your life? And if you think about it, like, how would I feel if I wasn't shaming myself all the time for not living up to this standard that I have for being a parent? And I know, coming from my point of view with childhood trauma and not wanting to be like my parents at all, I thought about being a parent as the opposite of who my parents were. Like, if they did this, then I automatically wanted to do the opposite. And that meant I set myself up for this huge standard to work towards all the time. And I fail at it all the time because I still have healing to do. I still have things I need to work through. And having this huge pendulum swing of, I don't want to be like my parents, so I'm going to do this instead, you're actually missing all the middle. That is life, and that is who you are in reality. And shaming that creates more and more suffering for you and your family. So practicing this agreement of always doing your best, knowing that it's not always going to be 100% perfect, it would really relieve you of the stress and anxiety that you're putting onto yourself. Like, no one else is putting that on you. It's your own thoughts that are creating these, standards. And what would it feel like if you didn't have them? Might feel like freedom, might feel like being content. And that doesn't mean that you're not striving to improve in areas that you can, but like I said, it's giving yourself some grace. So the next question is, have you noticed the difference between truly doing your best and not? So when you become more aware of your thoughts and feelings and your actions, and you start tying them together, like, oh, I noticed when I'm anxious, I bite my nails. And I really hate that about myself, and I don't want to do it anymore. So next time I'm feeling anxious, I'm going to be aware of this action and disrupt it. Or I'm going to know that if I did this action, I probably wasn't in my best frame of mind. I was probably being anxious, and that's okay. Now I need to uncover, why was I being anxious? What was I thinking? What was I feeling? What was going on that day? What were my circumstances? Kind of work your way backwards and tease out what's going on in those moments so you don't do that action. I just chose biting nails because I used to bite my nails and now I've stopped. Say it's yelling at your children. When I feel anxious, I'm looking to the future and trying to prevent some sort of danger. So I'm feeling anxiety and fear that this thing in my mind is going to happen to my family, and I want to protect them. And so instead of calmly saying, oh, Corey, let's get down from that huge rock, it's a little slippery, I'm like, Corey, get down. And I will yell and startle him, which might actually make him fall down and lose his balance. There's a way to handle certain situations in a calm, present state. And I can't do that if I'm anxious. So why am I anxious? Why am I feeling that way? So it's really peeling back the layers and understanding where your thoughts are coming from and why are they creating these emotions that are creating these actions in you. So I know that when I am feeling anxious, that's not my very best that I could be, but in that moment, that was my best because of my anxious emotions. It took over my mind and body, and my mouth opened and I yelled, right? I have grace for myself that I'm learning, and I can calmly pause, take a deep breath. Oh, okay. Feeling anxious, walk over to my son, hold his hand and say, hey, I want you to be more careful on this rock. I see that it's slippery. Did you notice that? Ask him questions to be more aware of his body and how to be more careful. That's just one simple situation that I can think of because it happened last week. Those are the things that if we're not careful of, like, we create more anxiety in the family because of something going on. And where that anxiety is coming from is if my son slips off the rock and breaks his leg, that means I wasn't a good mom and I wasn't protecting him. Like, that's a lot of weight to put on my shoulders. Children fall down, they get hurt, we have to deal with it. Yes, there's some responsibility I have in protecting my child, of course, but I'm making it mean that if something happens to him, I'm a huge failure, right? And like, whew, that's heavy. And what would happen if the worst case scenario, my brain goes to that and I'm like, oh my God, could I handle that? What if something happens to him permanently? I will die. Like, my brain goes to worst case scenario and the emotions flood and I am like on fire, full of anxiety and fear. That is not helpful to my son. I'm not in a teacher mode. I'm being very reactive to those emotions. So if I could stop, notice what I'm feeling in my chest, in my jaw, take a quick break, go over to him. Of course, if there's time, sometimes in real danger, like my son running out into a parking lot, you have to react. That is survival, right? But sometimes we take what we think, what is not really a real danger, like spilling yogurt on the ground, off the kitchen table, like it can bring up the same emotion as my son running into a truck. And I startle my son and he's like, oh my God, it's just yogurt. And like, we have this problem because of my anxiety. So notice when you are doing your best in allowing emotions, feeling your feelings, taking a break, taking a pause, and coming back to presence. And when you're overreacting from those past traumas, from those emotions. Okay, and last question is, how would teaching your children to always do their best without expecting perfection change how they feel about themselves? So using the yogurt analogy, I was upstairs doing something in like putting laundry away, and I hear a little crash in the kitchen, and I hear Corey go, oh no. And he was real upset about what had just happened. And I knew he was eating yogurt. And so I was like, okay, he probably dropped it on the ground. And I had a second being, I had distance from him. I was upstairs, he was downstairs. And I came down and he's like, Mom, I made a big mess. And he's like visibly upset, not crying, but like bracing himself for my reaction. And noticing that made me really pause and be like, okay, I need to treat this with peace and calmness. So I came down and I noticed he dropped his yogurt spoon. There's a yogurt splatter on the ground. And I go, okay, well, let's get a rag and clean it up. And he's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. And I can tell he's really like waiting for the hammer to drop. And I just said, okay, I asked him, what do you think we need to do to clean this up? And he grabbed the spoon and put it in the sink, and I handed him the rag to wipe it up. And we were just calmly cleaning up the mistake. And I asked him, what made you drop the spoon? He was like, I don't know. I just dropped it. And that was the end of the discussion. And I was proud of myself for showing him that sometimes we make mistakes and all we need to do is clean it up. Sometimes we need to apologize for it, but calmly recognize we made a mistake. We just clean it up. And so in that moment, I'm teaching him, you don't need to overreact. You don't need to have a huge emotional outburst about it. It's just yogurt. Just clean it up, move on. And I use that example because to him, it's a big deal because my husband and I are always like, don't make a mess. And we have this anxiety about making messes. And we've put that on him. And so now I'm trying to backtrack and reverse that a little bit. So I'm showing him that you can still do your best and you'll still make mistakes. And what do we do with mistakes? We clean them up. And so I want you to think about that. Comment on this video or send me an email. What was always do your best to you? What does that mean to you? How has this chapter helped you? Because he says in the book, I don't know what page it was on, but the 3 other agreements don't mean anything if you're not always doing your best. You're not going to get the other 3 agreements right every single day. Be impeccable with your word. I mean, come on. We say things that we don't even realize, right? We are repeating our past all the time. We say things that might be hurtful to other people, and we have to clean up that mistake. But in that moment, that was your best because that's all you could do in that moment. So if you are aware of what's happening and aware of the transformation you're making by recognizing the old agreements that you've made that you're breaking, making these new agreements, knowing you're going to be messy in the middle, but that you are doing your best, then you can give yourself that grace. And giving yourself grace is the best way to teach your children self-compassion and how to extend compassion to others. And that's what the world needs more than anything right now. All right, so thank you so much for joining me here. I would love to know how this is helping you, if it is at all. And like I said, you can comment below or email me. Next week, we are wrapping this up, week 6. We're going to be going over the last couple of chapters and talking about our next steps. What do we do from here? Now that we've read this book, now that we're implementing these agreements, what do we do now? How do we continue? Where can I find more support? So have a great week. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.